Ottawa's waking up under fresh snow. Parliament is buying more downtown office space, and Canada's biggest trade relationship is being repriced in real time. Later in the brief, we'll come back to one question that's hanging over all of it. If tariffs keep rising, do they actually raise money, or do they start costing more than they bring in? Today in Ottawa, it's a snowy one, with a high near -5 and a low near -11 degrees Celsius. And a quick local sports note, Atletico Ottawa's run in the CONCACAF Champions Cup is over after a 5-0 loss in Nashville, following last week's 2-0 defeat in Hamilton. Ottawa's focus shifts back to the Canadian Premier League, with the home opener scheduled for April 4th at TD Place, after all the recent uncertainty around the pitch during construction. Now, staying in Ottawa, but shifting to things that affect daily life and budgets, housing, offices, and defense, because the scale is getting bigger. The federal government is putting $3.7 billion toward about 6,000 new military housing units across 25 communities, with another 800 units already underway outside that plan. The push follows the Auditor General's warning that many existing units are aging, in poor condition, and that there's a broader shortage across multiple bases. Some of the largest allocations include more than 1,000 units each in places like Valcartier, Petawawa, and Edmonton. At the same time, Ottawa's defense industry is trying to present a more unified front. A new lobbying and coordination group, the Alliance of Canadian Defense Companies, launched with 23 founding members, including several Ottawa area firms. The basic pitch is coordination, procurement reform, predictable policy signals, and a single voice for a sector that spans everything from manufacturing to software, sensors, and autonomy. And downtown, Public Services and Procurement Canada confirms it's buying a 14-story office building at 131 Queen Street for $148.2 million. The timing lines up with the government's return to office direction. Executives expected on-site 5 days a week starting May 4th, and most other core public servants at least 4 days starting July 6th. The practical question in Ottawa will be how quickly departments consolidate space, and what that does to commuting patterns and the downtown workday. Turning now to the main thread, Canada and the U.S. and the shifting logic of tariffs, here's what's happening. A McMaster-led study used a global trade model, built from World Trade Organization and other data, to test what tariffs do to government revenue and to overall welfare. Their core finding is straightforward. Once tariffs climb past roughly 25%, tariff revenue starts to fall. In other words, there's a trade sector Laffer curve. Beyond a point, higher tariff rates can bring in less money because trade volumes shrink or reroute. The key point, the study concludes U.S. tariffs have moved past the revenue maximizing range, and beyond that point, make citizens worse off. That lands in the middle of two political realities. The reporting ties the analysis to a U.S. Supreme Court decision that struck down President Trump's sweeping global tariffs. Second, President Trump has also argued he wants tariffs to replace income taxes as a major source of government revenue. The risk here is that those two ideas don't naturally fit together. Even if tariffs are politically popular with some voters, the economic mechanics can work against the goal of reliably funding government, especially if tariff rates rise high enough to significantly suppress trade. Now bring it back to Canada. Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne is warning that access to the U.S. market may now come with a price, in the form of a baseline tariff that countries essentially pay to keep shipping goods into the U.S. He's also arguing Canada's effective rate is currently among the lowest, around 4.9%, because of continental free trade exemptions. But Canada still faces higher, sector-specific tariffs on things like steel, aluminum, autos, and softwood lumber. Mid-episode reset. Remember the question from the top. Do higher tariffs actually raise more money? This study says not necessarily, and that matters because Ottawa may be planning around a world where tariffs are not a temporary irritant, but a standing cost of doing business. Two quick supporting signals on the politics of it. 1. New polling from the Angus Reid Institute suggests 69% of Canadians surveyed want Canada to approach the U.S. as a potential threat or with caution. A polling analyst, Eric Grenier, says it points to a longer-term shift in how Canadians view the U.S., not just a momentary reaction. 2. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is expected to lay out a Canada-U.S. policy pitch to business leaders, including an energy and critical minerals strategy, the idea of a tariff-free auto pact, and a proposal to tie taxpayer support to stronger protections around Canadian intellectual property. He's also calling for an all-party working group ahead of the scheduled CUSMA review. The backdrop is that Conservatives are facing polling headwinds nationally, and there's pressure on all federal parties to explain what leverage Canada actually has in a tariff-driven environment. Before we close, one international travel note many Canadians will be watching closely. Flights to and from Puerto Vallarta have been resuming after cartel-linked violence and disruptions in parts of Mexico, following an operation that killed a top cartel leader known as El Mencho. Global Affairs is still urging caution. Go to the airport only if you have a confirmed flight and it's safe, and emphasizing the situation could change quickly. Now, the final piece to watch. On tariffs, watch for 2 timelines: the near-term decisions around what the U.S. sets as baseline rates, and the medium-term positioning ahead of the CUSMA review. And keep an eye on how Canada frames its choices, whether it treats tariffs as a negotiable dispute or as a persistent cost that gets built into prices, investment plans, and government forecasts. In Ottawa, watch what the return-to-office mandate does to federal real estate decisions, starting with that Queen Street purchase, and whether it meaningfully changes downtown foot traffic by late spring and summer. That's the brief for Thursday, February 26. I'm Ivy. Stay steady, and we'll watch what actually changes versus what just gets announced.